This is a short video to learn more about vaccines, how they work, how they are approved, and the latest on the COVID-19 vaccine by Pinal County Public Health District. This video was recorded on December 6, 2020, and the information is up to date as of that time. Vaccinations are a top health prevention effort in public health. Prevention is always better and less costly than treatment. Vaccines help you create antibodies to develop immunity to that disease without having to have the disease. In fact, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention has identified vaccinations as one of the top 10 public health achievements of the 20th century. Here is a list of the vaccines we are familiar with today: flu, hepatitis A and B, measles, mumps, rubella, polio, DTaP, Tdap, to name a few. These immunizations prevent 2 to 3 million deaths every year worldwide. Let me say that one more time because it is so significant. Immunization of these vaccines prevent 2 to 3 million deaths every year worldwide. How do vaccines work? They help create immunity by imitating an infection, and unlike the illness or the disease, help create antibodies to fight that infection without causing the sickness. After you receive a vaccination, the body is left with disease-fighting blood cells that can respond to the infection if encountered in the future. Now, of course, we know it can take a few weeks for the body to develop these cells and provide protection after the vaccination, and some vaccines even require booster doses. Mild side effects and symptoms can occur after a vaccination, such as fever or body aches, even a little bit of redness. And these are normal, and what that is that's your body getting ready, getting that immune response, building up those antibodies. It's important to know that vaccines go through an extensive process before they are approved. The steps in the approval process start from the testing in the lab to phase human trials, review from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, approval and launching the vaccine, and continued safety monitoring after approval. The phases start with the pre-licensure phase, then phases 1 through 3, FDA approval, and the vaccine launch and post-licensure safety monitoring. In post-licensure vaccine safety monitoring, the main focus is to monitor any side effects and delayed vaccine-associated adverse events. The CDC and the FDA are continuing to look at those and use 4 main systems to monitor the safety of vaccines in use. So ongoing safety is always a high priority. The one that you're probably the most familiar with is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, otherwise known as VARS. Now let's break it down and learn a little bit more about each of the stages. First is pre-licensure. Before a vaccine is tested on people, extensive lab testing is done. The FDA sets rigorous rules and standards for the clinical trials to ensure the utmost safety. In phase 1, it serves to find if the vaccine is safe, does it work, and are there side effects? And the vaccine is tested on adults. On phase 2, that phase gets bigger, and that phase serves to find what are the most common side effects and how are people's immune system responding. Hundreds of volunteers are in that phase. And in phase 3, this is where we compare trial data, we establish vaccine safety, efficacy, just how well is this vaccine working, what were all the common side effects, and this phase can involve thousands of volunteers, sometimes 30, 40, 50,000. Okay, finally, let's get to what we've all been waiting for. What do we know about the COVID-19 vaccines? First and foremost, safety is a top priority. Vaccine safety systems are being scaled up all across the country and all across the world to ensure that production of a safe vaccine as soon as possible. There are multiple COVID-19 vaccines in development and in different stages of the pre-licensure phase. And due to the pandemic, vaccines can actually be used under the Emergency Use Authorization from the FDA. And what this does is it just allows us to get the vaccine out faster and be able to give it to more people faster. Now, once approved under that emergency use authorization from the FDA, that's when the limited doses will be available and a tiered approach will be used to vaccinate. And this is where the fair and inclusive distribution is essential. So this is when, each state is looking at who is the most vulnerable. That's where we're going to get the vaccine to first. Most COVID-19 vaccines in trial now do require more than one shot. So that booster shot that we know that some of our other vaccines require. And if you can believe it, around the world, there are more than 100 vaccines in development. So it is all hands on deck right now. Everybody is coming together for the greater good to make this vaccine as safe and as fast as possible. We know how vaccines are made, but how were COVID vaccines made so fast? Let's discuss this a little bit more. And it really all comes down to Operation Warp Speed, which was led by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Operation Warp Speed started out with a goal to produce and deliver 300 million doses of safe and effective vaccines, with the initial doses available by January of 2021, as part of the broader strategy to accelerate the development of manufacturing and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services developed protocols for the demonstration of safety and efficacy to allow clinical trials to proceed more quickly, all the while the protocols and trials are overseen by the federal government, as opposed to the traditional public-private partnerships. In addition, rather than eliminating steps from the traditional development timeline, steps proceeded simultaneously, such as starting manufacturing of the vaccine at industrial scale well before the demonstration of vaccine efficacy and safety, as happens normally. Now, this increases the financial risk, but not the product risk. The federal government also made investments in the necessary manufacturing capacity at its own risk, giving firms confidence that they can invest aggressively in development and allowing faster distribution of an eventual vaccine. Manufacturing capacity for selected candidates was also approved and advanced while the vaccines are still in development, rather than scaled up after approval or authorization. Let's pause for a second and just talk about COVID-19 again. Now, I think we're all getting pretty tired of hearing COVID-19, quarantine, isolation, wear a mask. But we're learning so much about COVID-19 every day, and we all now know what can we do to stop the spread. We'll keep that 6 feet distance, of course, from others. Wear a mask or a cloth face covering, of course, washing our hands, using hand sanitizer, staying at home when you're sick, going into quarantine when you've been exposed. But what now? Now we have something else, and of course that's get the COVID-19 vaccination. How does the COVID-19 vaccine work? Just like all vaccines, like we've been talking about, it helps our bodies develop immunity. It does typically take a few weeks to develop immunity, so you can still get COVID during this time. For example, if you were exposed to COVID during the day or the next day after you received the vaccination, that wouldn't be enough time to be protected yet. In addition, we know that the COVID vaccine does take 2 doses, at least the initial vaccines that are coming out. Sometimes some people can experience some symptoms post-vaccination. Again, what we're learning right now is that symptoms or side effects are more common after the second dose, the booster dose. And they're just those common ones like headache, fever, and chills. You can take over-the-counter medications to help while the symptoms last, and they typically go away pretty quickly. And again, that's just your body starting to, develop that antibody immune response. Let's learn a little more about the COVID vaccines. At this time in the United States, there are 3 main types of COVID-19 vaccines in phase 3 clinical trials. mRNA vaccines is the first group we'll talk about, and this is the type that will be coming first from Pfizer and Moderna. mRNA vaccines are a new type of vaccine to protect against infectious diseases. To trigger an immune response, many vaccines put a weakened or inactivated germ into our bodies, but not mRNA vaccines. Instead, they teach our cells how to make a protein or even a piece of protein that triggers an immune response inside our bodies. That immune response, which produces antibodies, is what protects us from getting infected if the real virus enters our bodies. Now, let's break it down even more. The mRNA vaccines give instructions for our cells to make a harmless piece of what is actually called the spike protein. The spike protein is found on the surface of the virus that causes COVID-19. COVID-19 mRNA vaccines are given in the upper arm muscle, and once the instructions, the mRNA, are inside our muscle cells, the cells use them to make the protein piece. After the protein piece is made, the cell breaks down the instructions and gets rid of them. Next, the cell displays the protein piece on its surface. And once our immune system recognizes that, hey, this protein doesn't belong there, and begins building an immune response and making antibodies, just like what happens in natural infection against COVID-19. At the end of this process, our bodies have learned how to protect us against future COVID-19 infection. The benefit of mRNA vaccines, like all vaccines, is those vaccinated gain this protection without ever having to risk the serious consequences of getting sick with COVID-19. The second type of vaccine is protein subunit vaccines. Protein subunit vaccines include harmless pieces of proteins of the virus that cause COVID-19 instead of the entire germ. Once vaccinated, our system recognizes that the proteins don't belong in the body and begin making T lymphocytes and antibodies. Now, forever infected in the future, memory cells will recognize and fight the virus. The third type is vector vaccines. Vector vaccines contain a weakened version of a live virus, a different virus than the one that causes COVID-19, that actually has genetic material from the virus that causes COVID-19 inserted into it. This is why it's called a viral vector. Once the viral vector is inside our cells, the genetic material gives instructions to make a protein that is unique to the virus that causes COVID-19. Using these instructions, our cells make copies of the protein. This prompts our bodies to build T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes that will remember how to fight the virus again if we are infected in the future. Some frequently asked questions when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccination. Number 1, the COVID-19 vaccine will not give you COVID-19. Number 2, the COVID-19 vaccine will not cause you to test positive on a COVID-19 test. Number 3, people who have gotten sick from COVID-19 virus can still benefit from the vaccine. Remember, we're still learning a lot about natural immunity, and it might not last as long as we want it to, and that's what we're seeing in some cases. And you can think about it like the shingles vaccine. If you got shingles when you were younger, when you turn 50, a shingles vaccine is still recommended. Number 4, getting vaccinated can help prevent you from getting sick from COVID-19. So far, preliminary data coming back from all the clinical trials show us that the COVID-19 vaccine is working. It is preventing some major serious people from getting really sick. We still don't know, how long does the vaccine last? Will you need another COVID-19 vaccine in a couple years? All of that data we're still learning about, but bottom line is getting vaccinated can help prevent you from getting sick from COVID-19. Now, what about if you're in isolation or quarantine? Chances are some of you watching this video may be in quarantine. In general, when we talk about routine vaccinations, those with moderate or serious illness should wait until they're better to receive vaccinations. This stands true for the COVID-19 vaccination. The CDC recommends that vaccination should be postponed for anyone with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 until cleared from isolation. We shared lots of resources, and here's the references on today's video. So check out these resources. The CDC is always adding resources and does a really good job breaking the information down about COVID-19 and also about all the COVID-19 vaccines. And thank you for watching this video today. We hope you found it helpful. And please check out our website at www.pinellcounty.edu az.gov/public health, and you can find lots more information about COVID-19, about the COVID-19 vaccination, and how to contact us. Thank you.